Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sound Angle. This is Hans Martin Boff. Hans Martin Boff, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, Pablo.
No, thanks for you being here and receiving us at your studio in Berlin. Fantastic. So, it's an honor for me to be here, to be honest. You're one of the few producers I know who's fully into so-called immersive music, which I think we talked a couple of days ago in Super Booth, that I think you agree that we don't like the term immersive. It would be more like 3D sound.
You know, when I got started with it, I thought everything was up to grab, and I thought a word like omnio would be a good word. But immersive, just, we're immersed in immersive. It's just like everything's immersive.
Correct.
A visual thing is immersive. A diving class is immersive.
Yeah.
Whatever. So it seems too generic to me. Spatial is all right, actually.
I so much agree, yeah. I call it 3D, but spatial, that works too, yeah. So, if it's okay with you, I'd love to start with a bit of your story. How you started in the music production, sound engineering, what artists you've worked with, which I know, but please tell our audience your experience with great artists.
Well, it's a long story, my goodness. I'm not one of those people who wanted to be a producer engineer at age 14. So my first wish was to be a journalist.
Okay.
And then I became a journalist right after high school. I went to radio, actually. Mm-hmm. And, this probably takes a bit too long, but I had a little existential crisis when I was 20, 21, where various of my big plans just went down the tube. Mm-hmm. And to make a very long story very short, I moved to the United States, went to a recording school, a local one in Minneapolis where I lived. Was very lucky afterwards, because not only did I get a job at a recording studio as an assistant engineer, but the same day I got my job at that studio, Nirvana started recording In Utero at that studio.
Okay.
Now, I had nothing to do with that record, because, of course, you don't let the new guy from recording school in with
other than making coffee.
Well, not even that. I was not present until they were gone. It was a short session, They did this whole album in 2 weeks, mixing and all. And they left anyway. But I cleaned up after them, and I had their mixes before the album was released 6 months later, whenever it was. And I was very popular for a very short time of my life, but then I was the most popular guy in Minneapolis, I think. And then there's various ones I assisted, and I guess my biggest client ever, and I say this because my other big clients always ask about him, was Prince. I worked for Prince for 4 years in the late 90s, so did everything he did, including albums he did for other people like Chaka Khan. Yeah. Larry Graham, single collaborations with No Doubt, and Lenny Kravitz and stuff like that. And then I moved with my family to Germany, where I'm from. My family's not from there, but now they are. Okay. And I worked a lot with the Scorpions.
Yes.
And since I've been in Immersive, which is now going on 8 years-ish, more than that. Yeah. I've worked with one of my all-time heroes, Peter Gabriel.
Yes.
And the work we did together got a Grammy, which made me very happy.
Congratulations.
So that's the short show-off version of your lovely life in music.
Yeah, and this year you got nominated for a Grammy.
I did.
For a project that was far more personal, something that you actually created. Yeah,
it's like, I don't consider myself to be a musician. I feel like musicians are people that have some very close friends that happen to be instruments.
Yeah.
I've never had a close instrument friend. I've always used them for a purpose. I can make some noises with various instruments, and I'm an okay singer. But I've always had enough respect for actual musicians, and that only increased over time, to not consider myself a musician. And I'm perfectly happy helping musicians do their thing. Yeah. I don't have the urge to put myself in the spotlight. So I was for a very long time, I was very hesitant to release some of my own music. So I did under the name Tearjerkers.
Yes.
And it's an album of songs that I kind of randomly collected
Throughout the years
from...
you composed it?
Pardon?
Throughout the years, songs that you collected?
Well, it's like a combination of things that even happened in the early '90s during my recording school days that I wrote with a song, but I felt was never quite finished. Some songs that kind of came out of collaborations during productions with other people. Some I wrote specifically for the purpose at the end of the process, but most of those types of songs, and I just use them as guinea pigs for my immersive production ideas.
Right.
Tearjerkers, it's called. Tearjerkers, that's the album.
Yeah.
If you look for it on streaming services,
Sure.
it's a little moon with a tear.
We'll put it in the description as well.
Cool.
Of the video. We just heard a bit, so pretty nice. For the benefit of the audience, even for myself, could you explain a little bit the role of the music producer? Because, it's different in producing in cinema. It's not exactly the same as in music. Music producer might be the sound engineering or not, or might work with a recording engineer. And in the case of your experience with Prince, Scorpions, could you give us more details? I mean, were you involved in the actual, decisions of how to record things, and then the final product, how to craft the final product? In terms of sonic identity, I'm pretty sure you did, but in terms, for example, of musical structure or even melodies, do you get involved? What is the role of a music producer?
Well, a music producer traditionally doesn't have anything to do with the melodies and stuff. But so the way I explain it to people who are not from the business, and you, as you said, in movies, the producer is the guy who brings the money.
Right, executive producer.
No, the producer is the person who brings the money to the table, makes the project possible,
right,
and then hires everybody else and makes sure the whole thing is running. And then in movies, there's a director who's kind of creatively in charge of putting this together, and then there's the camera people who capture everything, but kind of follow the instruction of the director and capture the actors. So in music, the producer is like a director.
Yeah,
that's the job of a producer. You're in charge of taking the script, if you will,
artistic direction.
That is exactly it. It's artistic direction. Where is this going to go? What should it look? What should it sound like?
Yeah.
Was that a good performance or not?
Yeah.
It is, traditionally at least, not your job to write the songs or to craft the sound. So the sound recording engineer is like the camera person in movies. You take the direction of the producer, so the director, and you capture and craft sounds in the way that is pleasing, and you capture what's there. So like it's a combo of those things. So for most of my life, I come from a recording engineering background. So I recorded Prince. He would have never said that I produced anything. I mean, clearly, if you're a creative person, whatever you touch, you add some of your sauce.
Sure.
Some people feel like that's not the case. Prince wouldn't have. The Scorpions were open to it. When I was in a recording engineering position, if my ideas would augment the ideas of their producer and them, and Peter Gabriel actively encourages participation. He feels like everybody who touches something creatively leaves their mark.
Yeah.
So he hires people to leave their mark.
And he wants
yeah. So, and then with the Scorpions is a good example. So for a long time, I was only a recording engineer, meaning I would help them and their producer capture guitars, vocals, whatever, and we drums, mix a bit, do this and then the other thing. And for the last album, which is called Rock Believer, I was also a producer, meaning all of a sudden I would help shape structures, ideas, shape entire songs. I co-wrote one of them, stuff like that. Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Yeah. I think that it's important to clarify that too. I mean, I didn't have I guess, a good idea about it. But I think a lot of people get confused with that.
Yeah, totally. And a lot of people think these days that producers are the guys who actually make all the sound. You have to program the drums and you have to play the guitars and stuff. And some producers do, especially in pop music and in hip hop. There's a lot of producers have several roles that aren't traditionally producer roles, but it's not mandatory. The main thing of a producer is to guide the process.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, are there any other details or stories you'd like to tell us about during your experiences with bands?
What do you want to know? I've been doing this for 3 years.
Examples? Like I decided to put a microphone here, but then it wouldn't work, or I thought it would work, but it didn't, and then the musician told me, no, I don't like that sound, I'd like a more immersive sound, blah, blah, blah. Because I'm guessing that happens, right? You get a lot of feedback from the actual musicians.
Well, let me turn that around. I think part of, so I went, like I said, I went to a recording school for a year, which prepared me and kind of gave me the technical basic tool set. But I also, when I was living here many years ago, around the time when the wall fell, I had a job at a hotel where I would work the bars at night and then, was the night portier, the person at the front desk.
Yeah.
And I feel like that part of my education, if you will, was just as important, at least in the beginning, than my technical skill. So the ability to kind of see what people were about and to read the vibe in the room and to kind of anticipate what was going to happen.
Yes.
And the reason I'm telling you this is I feel like I could probably tell you lots of stories of accidental things that happened. But I think part of my job mostly as a recording engineer, but certainly generally as somebody who helps creative people in the studio, is to anticipate what could happen.
Okay.
And to be ready for it. So if I have like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mics in the room, it's not just one where they go like, oh, I didn't like that mic or I didn't do this. But there may be accidental things where there's like a microphone in the corner and you open it by accident and you go like, wow, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So you have to be ready for it. There's an English phrase which is catching lightning in a bottle.
Okay.
Which means try to capture something that is randomly happening and keep it. And that's kind of what I need to do in the studio. I need to be ready when the creative lightning starts, when the thunderstorm starts, that is creativity, that I'm ready to capture it. And not go like, hold on, lightning. I need to put up a mic first.
Of course, yeah, you have to be ready for it.
You have to be ready.
But how about the psychological management of a situation in a studio? Would you take that as your responsibility too? Like, well, not responsibility, but would you care about that?
As a producer, I have to, don't I? I mean, part of the deal of what I have to do is to guide the process along and to, make people feel comfortable and also understand what drives them and what bores them, and try to be set up so they can create, or if they're not very focused, to like create, get as much as possible, which is something I do now with stuff that I do for myself. Like I said, I'm not a musician, but I prepare musical frameworks, and then I let musicians get loose on it, which is really random sometimes. And then my act of creativity is taking what they had. My act of creativity is guiding them in their improvisation, but then taking the improvisations and editing them into something that I find something.
Which is why sessions should be long, right? I mean, short sessions normally don't yield that many results. I mean, you might want to spend several weeks with a band just experimenting, playing. Totally
depends on the band.
Right.
Some bands are super prepared.
Want to go and record.
Yeah, some bands are just super prepared. Sometimes you as a producer at least, you spend a lot of time in pre-production, so you go see them where they live and you go in their rehearsal space. I told you about Nirvana, which I wasn't part of, but I remember that they recorded 18 songs in 2 days, and then they spent another 2 days on various overdubs, and then they mixed for 10 days, and then the album was done. So that is just as legit as as doing.
I spent in 6 months, right?
Well, yeah, and I love doing that now. I love, you know, I don't write in a traditional sense. Once again, I'm not a musician, so I can't talk to an instrument to get my ideas out. My instrument is the recording studio. So I don't sit there in the traditional sense and find nice chords and then find the story that go with the chords and the melody, or I have a melody and or a lyric idea and fine tune that and then go to a studio to record it. I find sonic moments in the studio that inspire me, or I have an idea and make a really rough demo and find ways to express them and find other people to do it, or find sonic moments. So I use the recording studio as something that creates rather than something that documents.
Yeah.
So I think that's totally up to the individual. Like Prince could do a whole album in a week.
Yeah.
So like in those 4 years I worked with him, I think I recorded over 200 songs, you know, and
Seriously? Wow.
Yeah, and even though he released a lot, I would assume a third is still unreleased, or a certain amount, a lot is still unreleased.
Yeah.
Peter Gabriel didn't release an album of new material in 20 years.
Yeah.
So he's a sculptor. He's more of a sculptor, and Prince is more of a photographer of sounds.
I get it, yeah. Would you agree that, I mean, to me, I couldn't agree more that studio is a place to create, not to document. I like the way you said it. I was going to ask you, would you agree that you as a producer or mixing engineer or whatever, you should be able to claim rights, proprietary rights, along with a song?
Oh, there's a big question. As a mixing engineer, no.
Okay.
I don't think that, you know, it's really interesting in this country, in Germany, we have VAT, so we like sales tax, and you add it to your services as well.
Yeah.
So when I write an invoice, I agree on a certain amount of money, and then I have to add sales tax to it in my invoice.
Yeah.
Now, we have different percentages of sales tax for artistic things and for craft, if you will. So if I write an invoice for recording, I add 19%. If I write an invoice for producing, which is considered artistic, I add 7%.
Okay.
Now for mixing, it's also 19%. It's considered a craft, and that I disagree with. I think at this point that is an artistic, at least as artistic as it is a craft thing. Like a craft thing would be, you know, recording engineering, set up the mics. That is not necessarily artistic. That is a craft, the craft of capturing sound. But the act of mixing is the craft of sculpting sound. Having said that, I don't think you should get artistic part for mixing in terms of like songwriting and such. As a producer, a lot of times the division is much smaller.
Okay.
But I do, you know, I mean, people like Steve Albini, who did that Nirvana album, he would never even get a cut of his work because he felt like, you know, if you're an architect, which is clearly creative too, and you build a house, you get paid for building the house. Yeah. You don't get forever a cut of the rent of the place. No. So that's, you know, that's more of a philosophical way of looking at it. But to really answer your question, which is more or less how do you get paid as a producer? There are many ways of doing it. All of them are legit. Maybe you get a really nice daily rate. Yeah. And that's, for example, what happened with me and the Scorpions. I got very well paid for every day. Mm-hmm. If you really develop a band, so if you get like a bunch of 18-year-olds who don't, you know, and you help them craft their songs, maybe you should get part of their songwriting credit. Right. And the last one, which is the traditional one, that you get a cut out of record sales, unless you're Taylor Swift, I don't think that really helps you any at this point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Interesting. Cool. Okay, let's jump into immersive music. I'd like to start with a question, which is maybe the way I see things, which is what does reverb mean to you? Because I have my own ideas about it. So I'd like to know other people's idea, especially you who like immersive music. To me, reverb will tell you there are different ways to look at reverb. Reverb will tell you where the sound is. If you want to look at it in a technical, boring way, it's going to tell you where is the sound located. And it's interesting that it shines even through its absence, because if there's no reverb, zero reverb, then it's still telling you where the sound is, for example, in the desert or on the beach or something like that. And there's also very emotional things about reverb, in my opinion, because evolution made us think of reverb as secure. It gives you the idea that you're inside an enclosed, well, you're in an enclosed space, therefore you're safe.
Wow.
It's another way of looking at it. Safety, then definition of space, then obviously creativity. One of the things that fascinates me about audio is that you can mix different reverbs, different spaces within one song, which is totally, I call it surrealism. You know, you could call it whatever you want, fantasy, whatever, but it's not an everyday thing. A band cannot play, in different spaces at the same time in reality, but it can in audio. And that leads me to the idea, well, how do you represent reverb? Well, that should be 3D, right? To make a high quality reverb, it should be 3D because it's 3D directions, reflections. And then that brings me to so-called immersive music, which I think we both agree we don't like the term, but spatial music.
That's fine. I live with immersive music. It's
yeah,
just,
me too.
I don't have to put my stamp on everything. Well, that's a really good question. So most of the things you just mentioned, I don't see it as, which is really reality. So maybe just kind of go back. If you look, the main difference between classical recordings and pretty much any other recording, what I call pop music, not as in Katy Perry, but like in popular music, anyway, I'll explain it in a second. So classical music is a finished piece of work most of the time. So it's written out, the arrangement is done before the recording even starts. And then you take a body of sound, which is an orchestra or a single performer, and their instruments, an instrument, into a sounding space. And the act of recording classical music is to capture that space. That's all you do. You record that space, you augment it, you edit various recordings, but that's pretty much it. The basic thing is taking a picture of what you just experienced. In pop music, that's totally different. It's like a painting. You create a painting out of different sounds. The act of, maybe not in jazz or traditional recordings here and there, but like as you said, like spending lots of time in the studio, the act of recording and the act of thinking up the music is totally mashed up. It's a yin-yang process. Recording creates musical ideas, creates compositions, creates recordings.
Right.
So there's no reality involved. And reverb is a way of making a creative point, not of describing reality. Like you said, in a recording, you can have a huge cathedral sound on the snare and a really small sound on the vocal.
Exactly.
And they can live in the same world.
Yeah.
So to me, reverb, or a room sound, I should say, is two things. One, to make a creative point, and two, to glue several individual sounds together. And for the latter, I prefer recording a room rather than using a reverb.
Yeah.
So I use reverbs. I like reverbs.
Mm-hmm.
My, at least an immersive, approach to taking sounds and creating a whole, I try to not use reverbs, but to actually record the room. And I do so by reamping. So I would go into a place like Real World Studios if I worked there, and their big room, which is called the big room.
Okay. It looks massive in the
It's not called the massive. The massive room is called the big room. So there you go.
Okay.
And they have now a 914 like here speaker setup, meaning I can go in there. Say I've mixed, set up a choir, which is going all around the place. I play it through the speakers. I put a microphone in the middle and I record the room, and then I use that naturally created reverb to glue that mix together as an additional layer. So I prefer that. And then for actual reverbs, they're more to give accents. So like something like a short slappy type thing on the
vocals, maybe?
Vocals, or several ones on the vocals, like let's say one reverb on the verse, a different one in the pre-chorus, slightly different one in the chorus, to make a creative point.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think people are not very aware that so many things are, I call it surrealism. You might want to choose a better term, I don't know, but they're not fully aware, which is why I was asking, that most of what you hear in mainstream pop audio produced music, it's totally unreal. You cannot hear a voice singing close to a drum set. It's impossible, unless it's jazz and refine the dynamics of music. But in rock music, someone singing with the drum set 1 meter away, it just doesn't exist. Because the drums sound so loud, you're not going to hear the voice. Yet in audio, you can hear a clear, beautiful voice on top of a super loud drums. No? So you have that surrealism of levels, but also of spaces. And I think it's, I love how you said it. You have to do a painting. That's what you do with pop music and rock music.
Or a hamburger if you don't like it. Yeah.
Okay. So cool. So okay. So the best way to represent space is in 3 dimensions. Your motivation to go into spatial music, how did it start? It just went like, wow, that sounds amazing. I don't know why, I don't care, which is perfectly valid. I just want to do it. Would it be also that it is higher quality, it's a higher quality representation of sound, if you think about it, simply because it's 3D and our ears work in 3D due to evolution, due to nature. Let me just finish the question. So, higher quality, I don't care what it is, it just sounds great. And I can move things around, or no, because then if I move things around, people get distracted. It's a huge new world. So could you give us an idea of how do you approach it?
I never wanted to be part owner or owner of a studio, because I've worked in studios in the beginning of my career too much to know how little it has to do with making music and how much it has to do to keep things running and cleaning things and whatever. And I changed that for the benefit of this studio, MSM, because of the people that run it. And we are all super enthusiastic about immersive music, about 3D music, for different reasons. So I really wanted to join this place because I think we could really, really help each other in our different approaches. Now, their approach, my friend Stefan's approach, is very much about the sonic quality.
Yeah.
How big a sound it is and how huge you can transport it, and that it's just physically better than let's say, a stereo CD.
Yeah.
I don't care at all about that. I feel like immersive is impressive, or the other way around. I was not impressed by immersive for surround, anything beyond stereo, for a very long time.
Okay.
Because I figured, who the hell has that at their house? Who's gonna sit at home, have a perfect speaker setup of more than 2 speakers, have it calibrated properly, sit in the middle to listen to music. The music I make and the music I enjoy is my soundtrack or yours.
Yeah.
So it's about, you know, me living my life, and this is what helps me do it.
Yeah.
If I sit in the middle, I'm not living my life. I'm listening to music. I'm observing. I'm in the middle of an event. I'm not doing the dishes or running or making love or whatever it is you do with music.
Yeah.
So I always thought, well, that's not really valid. Valid as a form of communication for me. That changed when a friend of mine played me a binaural version of surround music, meaning something I could put up on regular headphones, nothing special, cheap in-ears,
Yeah.
expensive ones, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and experience the vastness of that sound
Yeah.
just in my everyday stuff. And everybody has headphones, so I figured, well, that's a great thing. And then I got into it creatively,
Yeah.
because I thought, well, clearly you have more creative space
Yeah.
to fill with music if you have immersive. And then, you know, the way I see it now, I felt like when I got into it, that I've been sitting on the couch all my life,
Yeah.
looking outside of the window to the sunset, which is nice. And all of a sudden I went outside and I'm actually sitting on the dunes seeing the actual sunset. I'm surrounded by the light. There's the sunset, but there's the reflections, there's everything that goes with it. So I'm totally into it because I love the creation of the music in it. That's it. That's really it.
Well, I mean, that's more than valid, yeah. I'm curious to know also because, well, if you fragment the experience of music, as we were talking earlier, that some guitars emerge from the sides, and you said, yes, but it's not helping, it's not making this musical transition better. And then you decided to go and record more guitars to be able to, you know, make it work, as you say. So I'm very interested in knowing what is making it work might mean, because I'll tell you a little bit of my experience. Now, at first, I used to not like the fragmented experience of music, which is how I call it. Like the early Beatles that would have a voice, guitar, drums. It was like, what? But in immersive, in spatial music, you can do that. You can have a fragmented experience of music. And I used to not like it at all. But I changed. It's like when I was a kid, I didn't like broccoli. And suddenly you grow up.
And you have immersive broccoli. Yeah.
And I like broccoli nowadays, and a lot of things that I did not like as a kid. So nowadays, if the music starts completely fragmented, and let's say it doesn't even start at the front of me, it can start at the back or on the side, I've grown up to it. So, I mean, that's me. But I'm curious of what people think, or how would you feel of what works and what doesn't work? Well, is there a logic behind that, like a sensory logic?
There is a sensory logic behind it, you know. I mean, there's so two things. First of all, I'm not dogmatic about there needs to be music. There needs to be something everywhere at all times. But that depends on the story of the song.
Yeah.
The whole point of arranging is to guide attention, musical attention, to the story. And I give you the example you mentioned is the song called Panopticon by Peter Gabriel, where I felt like I needed more material than I had in the chorus, is because what I heard in the material he was giving me was a quirky, kind of fragmented reflection on something in the verse, and then a conclusion that happened sonically and in terms of storytelling in the chorus. And when I just had those two guitars that I had in stereo, it wasn't a step up from the verse. That's why I wanted to fill it, not because I had something else. There's another song called The Court that he does on the same album, I.O., which is a call and response thing between a verse vocal and a choir in the chorus. And I tore that apart, where like the vocals here and the chorus is there. Why? Because the story gives that to me. So that's number one. Number two, more technically. So one of the things when you start making music in immersive, you find out that there are certain things, as you said, in the way we as humans perceive sound, which is something you do utilize anyways in stereo, but you're not aware of it. For example, that if you're in stereo and you pan a hi-hat, that works pretty well, doesn't it? If you try to pan an 808 kick, it doesn't work very well. You're not thinking about this, but that's just how it is.
Yeah.
What it means is sound is more directional at high end. So that's one thing to know. Now, if you get into this, then you really start to think about why our sounds working in specific spots. For example, the reason I still have the drums and the vocal over here is because our attention, like you and I, we're looking at each other, where our attention is of really important things is always the front. If somebody would come in right now from behind me, I'd be startled and I'd turn my head. So if I don't want to startle musically, don't put important stuff in the rear. Then if you take a walk and you go through the park and you hear a bird, you'll fairly quickly localize where the bird is, which is up there, meaning things that are really twerpy, 8K type stuff is really good for the heights. So that's kind of how you start thinking about sounds in a new way. The last thing I want to say is there's two elements to immersive illustration, if you will. One is localization. You have Superman flying from there to there. That is localization. So you being aware where something is specifically or where it's moving and moving to. The other one is called envelopment. So you're just surrounded either by a big sound or various big sounds or many, many, many small sounds, like you take a walk, once again, in the park, in spring, whatever, you hear tons of birds, you have footsteps, you hear voices, and you don't really realize that one's there specifically or whatever. It's the whole thing is painting.
Spatial envelopment.
Yes, envelopment. So those are the two things. And I figured out when I started working in binaural with headphones that localization, so where something is specifically, is really, really hard to reliably reproduce in headphones. So you and me and Andrea, who's filming this, would hear it differently if we had it there. Meaning, it can't be a reliable way to arrange. So if my arrangement, my storytelling is dependent on you observing the sound going from there to there as I do in headphones, I'm running the risk of not being able to tell my story reliably to you. So to me, the act of envelopment is what you use to create the story. And the act of envelopment doesn't mean everything's everywhere at all times, but you play with the now I'm surrounded by everything. Now something's totally specifically there, So that's how I use the sound. The Beatles' approach to things, of like having the drum kit here and there. First of all, it should be said that it wasn't like a creative decision by the Beatles.
No, it was a technical thing, right?
Well, it's like, they would do the mono mix of Sgt. Pepper and then they'd fuck off, and the producer and the recording engineer would make that crap stereo mix for the 5 idiots that had more than one speakers at their house at the time. And they had four tracks to mix with. How do you make a stereo mix with 4 tracks? Most of it is on one track, the vocal is on another. There's a guitar solo and a shaker. What do you do? So you put the band there, you put the vocal there, you have the guitar solo in the middle, and you go with a shaker. And I feel that is not a creative aesthetic decision. So I want to make very purposeful creative aesthetic decisions when I make an immersive mix.
And how do you feel about actual sound movement? Like when things move, it really makes you pay attention, right? So it's a strong thing for us to hear a sound in movement because it makes you turn around. What's going on, right? So musically, you mentioned the Superman example. Probably, I'm guessing, thinking about a movie, but that's another story. In terms of music, sound movement is something that drives me a little bit crazy because it seems tempting to move things around, but then you do, and it doesn't work. And it obviously depends on the music, depends on the story, as you're saying, but there's still a mystery there. To me, it is a mystery because sometimes I'm convinced that if I move that sound in this particular moment, it's going to work, and it doesn't. Sometimes it's exactly the opposite. And sometimes when I'm completely convinced that I shouldn't move that, right? If I move it 3 degrees, I'm talking really, 5 degrees, whatever, something that it's noticeable, it makes me feel something beautiful.
Are you thinking about a movement, so a sound starts at one point and ends at the other, or are you talking about placement?
Movement, like I'm thinking about a clarinet, for example, playing a melody, and while it plays a melody, it shifts position from one point to another. Why? Because why not?
So there are two ways that...
I'm sorry.
There are 2 ways that I do this, do movement. The main way is, once again, to guide musical attention. So, for example, if I have a wish sound that goes towards the one of the one, the beat one, the first beat of a verse, then I go before the snare hits or before the vocal starts. So it's a guiding thing. That's number 1. If the inherent quality of the sound suggests a movement, I will do that too. So if it's a sound like what I just did, actually,
crescendo, right?
Something like that, just a short sound. That sounds like it's moving, doesn't it? I mean, it sounds like a tire screeching or something. It just sounds like it should move. Okay. But that's just one of the things. Anyway, storytelling. That's one. Yeah. Number 2. Once again, when I was starting in headphones immersive, I noticed that the concept of reality is really hard to convey in headphones, at least in immersive. So, for example, so our eyes are really, really important to our perception. So if I would, for example, make an immersive recording in this room, and then I put it on headphones for you, you'd rip it off and go like, I can't believe that's not real, it's so great. Now, if we take that same recording into a cathedral, your eyes will say, well, this ain't a small room like the one I'm just hearing, so it's fake. So your brain goes fake, because the brain is a slave to the eyes in terms of reality perception. Eyes always win. Always, always, always win. So I thought, how am I going to deal with this, with the reality thing? And my conclusion is, I break up reality. I tell the brain, reality is far gone, but this is really cool. Yeah. It's just different.
Right.
So, in a way, sometimes I move things around me to prepare the listening experience in itself. Mm-hmm. So, for example, on my album, the Tearjerkers album, the first song is this very short thing called City Limits. And the only really reason for it is, within the content of the album, is to tell the brain this has nothing to do with reality. And it's like, I'll play it for you later, but it's just a break up of different worlds that interact. It's kind of like you go in through, it's like being in one of those Marvel movies where you go from World 1, World 2, World 3, but like within seconds, it just kind of goes all over. And at the end, you hear a realistic car going by, which is like a sound recording I did, and then you hear like a loop going, slowly starting. Okay. And after a couple bars...
A musical loop?
A musical loop, a drum loop, goes around and then stops at the front, and that's when the song proper starts. Okay. So it's just like to tell your brain, for the brain to go, whoa, 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 whoa. This is not real, but I like it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, this is not reality. This is something different. This is something new.
As they say in America, this is not Kansas anymore. Yes. Okay, anyway.
Well, I think my final question would be technical. If there's anything interesting to add nowadays about technicalities, like, for example, mastering Dolby Atmos, possible future in which Dolby Atmos disappears and Sony 360 takes over.
Never.
Or ambisonics. Probably never, right? Or more technical things like it's still a bit of a mystery if you should master or not a Dolby Atmos mix. I think you should, but who's going to do that? It's either you or Michael Romanowski or people who are really into it. And so anything you'd like to perhaps advise to enthusiasts about spatial music?
Well, if you're into mastering, I mean, you know, maybe it should be pointed out that mastering is really, traditionally at least, kind of mixing the mixes. So you have 12 different final mixes, and you try to make them all be even enough to each other's that there are a homogeneous whole album. Now in immersive, that's a bit more difficult, or I should say, not in immersive as much, but like in Dolby Atmos, it's a bit different because you have all these objects, meaning, so your final mix isn't like limited to, you know, 15 speakers, say, but like to as much as 128 different sounds that are packaged into the suitcase that is Dolby Atmos and then delivered to you. Meaning if you master it, you're kind of doing a mix update of 128 sounds, if that's what you're doing. And I personally don't have anybody master my stuff at this point.
Okay.
My immersive stuff, my stereo stuff, yes.
Okay.
And the act of mastering to me is to have somebody I trust with a new ear in stereo.
Yeah.
Somebody I trust with a new ear, give that a new listen and do like very small updates. Nothing substantial.
New ears.
New ears, that's what it is. And I just don't have that yet in immersive, which is not as arrogant as it sounds. I just really enjoy the fact that immersive is kind of a ground zero to the world. So I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
If it's interesting, there is no standard per se. And Michael Romanovsky, if I would go to somebody, I would go to him probably.
Probably me too.
Or to actually my colleagues here, which, you know, in a way master because they listen to my stuff and give me advice.
Yeah.
But, you know, both Stefan Bock and David Merkel do master in immersive and they do well with it. But at this point, I personally don't do it. I know, you know, my friend Justin Gray, who won the Grammy this year for his work Immersed, did go to Michael and wanted that second pair of ears. And Michael's second pair of ears, and we're friends now, is both sonically enhancing the individual parts of this immersive mix and also the positioning. So you kind of go like, you know, maybe this would work better if it's slightly to the left or slightly up, kind of. You know, the clarinet example you had earlier, you have an object, maybe it should move over further. So he slightly calibrates that. And he does a great job, clearly, for a lot of people.
Right.
I personally have so far chosen not to do this.
Which is very interesting. So what do you hear here is what you get. I mean, what do you finish here in this room, that's how it's going to sound.
Bingo, the end.
Else.
Yes, correct.
And the technical aspect of actually mastering with 12 channels, it also involves new tools, right? Compressors that can, and EQs that can treat every channel individually, and at the same time it can treat them as a whole. Are those tools there already, or people have to invent them?
They have to invent them. I mean, I've been very fortunate in the last couple of years to be able to go to manufacturers and go like, why doesn't this exist? Because I'd really like to have it. So I've been the instigator and I guess the tester of a wonderful Waves plugin called the Immersive Wrapper, which is something I really missed. Was, you know, there are some great multi-channel compressors, and they're being more and more. And I employ, for example, the Oricomp by PSP, I think they're called. So forgive me that I ruin this all the time. Okay. There's the Fab Filter C3 now, stuff like that. But if you've mixed for a long time in your life, you have like preferences, sonic preferences about what you want to use. You know, I mean, it's not just about controlling dynamics. I have, through various bundles and by choice, hundreds of compressors, and I use them because they have a specific sound that I enjoy. Anyway, so within this Immersive Wrapper, I can now import any plugin, VST that is, but in Pro Tools and others as well, I can now import any plugin I like that is sidechainable and make a multi-channel compressor out of it.
Okay. And
at the same time, I can do that across several tracks. So I can make, let's say, a group of this compressor group, and I put it on a 7.1.2 track and on every object, and they will talk to each other, and all of a sudden it's like a compressor for the whole thing.
Okay. Right. So you do master your mix, so to speak. I mean, not that you're not mastering with somebody else, but you are mixing and mastering.
I wouldn't call it that at all.
Okay.
To me, mixing is taking sounds and putting them together.
Yeah.
And you do that by balance, which is my favorite, making things louder and quieter. You do that by compression, combining things and making them move together. Yeah. You do that by EQ, by clearing up frequencies and adding things, and you do it by reverb and effects. And that's really it. So in my stereo mixes, I use tons of different buses. All the kick mics go through a bus. All the snare mics go through a bus. The kick and snare buses go through another bus. All the drum buses, including that one, go through a drum bus. All the bass, the keys through. At the end, they go through an instrumental bus. All the vocals go through a bus. And every one of those gets somehow becomes more one.
Yeah.
I'm making one out of many.
Yeah.
And at the end, on the master, I have various things too. So I clearly want to do that as well with Immersive. And that gets more and more possible with tools like that.
Yeah.
And you know, many other effects that come up and things. And the only really problem in Immersive at this point is CPU. Because clearly if I have that immersive wrapper, let's say, and I have a 916 bus, and I put a Soothe plugin in there, which is very CPU intensive, all of a sudden I have 16 Soothe plugins in one plugin. So my computer goes, "Ooh,
excuse me,
have you paid enough for me?
Yeah.
Are you from the future?"
Yeah.
You know, but other than that, so it's kind of oddly enough, bit back to the beginning of my digital journey in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, where I had to bounce a lot and freeze a lot and stuff. So I'd have to do a lot of those things. But generally, that's exactly how I approach it. I wouldn't call that mastering. That's just that process of combining things, and that is just pure old mixing.
Yeah.
It just so happens that masters employ the same technique.
Cool. Very nice. I think we ran out of time. It's been a pleasure, but before we say goodbye, I'd like to give you a small gift. I came to Super Booth, as you know, with a lot of weight with a lot of equipment. So I wish I would have brought a different version of this, the properly heavy one, but I couldn't afford 1 more kilo in my luggage. So this is just a personal gift from me to you, which is for your wall, if you wish, which is the for my 3D instruments designed for more like for live performance and using 3D sound systems rather than studio production.
Thank you so much.
Just wanted to have that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pablo. Thanks for visiting. I always you know, feel like there's a fairly limited amount of people that have fully understood the creative potential of Immersive. Most people think it's a way to reorganize what they do anyways, as a mixing concept, which is not what it is to me. That's part of it, but it's not the main thing. So I really, really appreciate your enthusiasm in adding your bit and adding creative tools to the shed.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
No, same for me, because I come from the academic world, and we used to do Immersive many decades ago in universities, and we were the rats in the lab, you know, and it would be impossible to share it to somebody other than experimental music festivals. But suddenly Dolby Atmos came out, which is a standard in the industry, and I was very curious about it. But the funny thing is that that academic experimental world I come from doesn't really talk to the industry. They don't say, and vice versa. So I thought, this is not right, man. We need to talk to each other. And I went and started, that's how I met Michael Romanowski and people like that. I went to conferences, Immersive music conferences in New York, AES, and I thought, I don't want to miss this. And I want to know what people are doing in immersive music like you, more like in the mainstream, and learn from it and being part of it. I don't want to be like in a different world and not talking to each other. So this is part of my motivation of being here with you as well.
Well, I'm glad you made it.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you reached out and you came to the beautiful city of Berlin without freezing to death. Much appreciated. And come back soon.
Sure. And hopefully we'll see you in Mexico at some point soon.
Oh, you can bet on that one.
Yeah. More than welcome.
All right, man.
My
Cheers.
pleasure.
Bye-bye.
See you.